إلا أننا في داخل الهيئة العامة للإذاعة والتلفزيون في تلفزيون السودان وفي الإذاعة السودانية الآن الأحوال هادئة ونحاول أن نتواصل مع
Since the start of fighting on 15 April, hundreds of people have been killed and thousands injured. The violence must stop. It risks a catastrophic conflagration within Sudan that could engulf the whole region and beyond.
The 15th of April, Sudan. Violent clashes erupted between two major military factions. Sudan's army, headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the Rapid Support Forces, led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, commonly known as Hemedti. But do you know, before becoming enemies, these two leaders were allies. In 2019, the duo worked together to oust the then President Omar al-Bashir, ending his 30 years of autocratic rule. Since then, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has been the de facto head of state for Sudan's Transitional Governing Sovereign Council. On the other hand, there is the RSF, the Rapid Support Force. Majorly composed of the Janjaweed militias, which fought on behalf of the Sudanese government during the war in Darfur. The RSF was responsible for numerous atrocities against civilians. According to the Human Rights Watch, the RSF's actions in Darfur qualify as crimes against humanity. So you can imagine what would be happening in Sudan now as Hemedti mobilizes his forces against al-Burhan's men.
Since December, we started to see more and more divides between between both men, and from 2 months ago, both men started to bring more troops in the capital. And on 1st of April, a civilian government was supposed to be formed, to be nominated, but it was postponed by Burhan and Hemedti because they were in disagreement over this political agreement. So since then, the divide started to increase, and 10 days ago, when the fight and the clashes started really in the capital, everybody in the country was expecting this situation.
Tensions have been building for months between Sudan's army and the paramilitary organization, Rapid Support Forces. Sudan was due to adopt a new framework for a transition to democracy. A final deal was to be signed earlier in April, under which both the army and the RSF were required to cede power. But a disagreement over the integration of the RSF into the military as a part of a transition towards civilian rule resulted in chaos.
In December last year, a political agreement was signed between Hemedti, Burhan, and the political parties, the civilians. And at this time, it was really a gap started to emerge between both men. Hemedti took the side of civilians, and he stated he recognized that the coup was a mistake, and he stated that no civilians or no protesters should be killed anymore in the street, and no politician should be arrested. And it took stance against also the army, the institution. saying that the army should let the power to the civilians and stop hanging to the power.
According to the World Health Organization, more than 420 people have died and thousands injured since the clashes started. Heavy artillery is being used by both sides in densely populated areas. Regions like Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and its sister cities, Omdurman and Bahri, have been rocked by fierce battles. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have now spent almost a week trapped in their homes. Last-minute efforts to impose a ceasefire before the end of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr failed.
This Eid is different from previous ones. Bombs are going off everywhere. So much blood has been shed. People are living in terror. The blessing of feeling secure has been taken away.
Desperate residents are looking for ways to escape. It is estimated that between 10,000 and 20,000 people have fled the fighting to seek safety in Chad, Sudan's western neighbor. Other neighboring countries are also bracing for a refugee crisis. Sudan's citizens are in deep peril, forced to remain caged in their homes. They are now experiencing a scarcity of food, water, and electricity. Though essential supplies are running out, they cannot dare to step out. Sudan's health system, too, is on the verge of a complete breakdown.
General Al-Burhan and General Hemeti are fighting over power, over authority. They are looting the country and the people. But we are fighting for food, drink, education and health services.
As many nations rush to evacuate their citizens, is Sudan on the brink of complete political collapse? Will stranded citizens return home safely? And what key interests do other nations have in the strife-struck country? Will they come to Sudan's aid? Let's take a look.
Come fast. Me and my friend trapped in the road because army has started taking over many roads ahead and they are checking all the vehicles. When we tried to cross to our place, they started raising the gun, then we ran away.
This is Maheen, a travel blogger from India. The 22-year-old had been traveling through Asia to Africa and arrived in Khartoum on the 10th of April. Maheen has been hiding from open gunfire that has been rampant on the streets.
I just reached this place, this mosque. It is 7 kilometers from the place where I am staying.
He says he had a close call when a person dressed in a military uniform pointed a gun at him.
See, army is there.
He has been filming his experiences.
One and only one, and everything is empty now. All the water, all milk, everything is empty here on the refrigerator.
1,000?
Wow. See, everything is colors. Nothing left. Food stock is not available. I just went to the supermarket to buy water, but I am short in cash. I have only 2,000 Sudanese pound, but I had to pay 7,000 for the water. I couldn't buy water, so they were just saying me to get out. You don't have money.
He reports that instead of protecting civilians, the country's armed forces are actually extorting them.
I can't trust the forces. I had to be inside some house or somewhere, and even the armed force now looting the people. They are coming to people's house, they are taking money and their stuff. As a traveler, I didn't expect out such a conflict here in Sudan.
The travel blogger has contacted the Indian embassy. He hopes to be evacuated soon and continue his journey to Ethiopia. While some stranded people like Maheen are fighting for basic necessities, others are fighting for their life. Batul Sharif is one of the many patients at the Ahmad Kasim Dialysis Center in Khartoum. The unrest is causing immense suffering for people like her, who have failing kidneys and need regular dialysis treatments since the clashes began in the mid of April.
I'm so tired. My kidneys are not functioning properly. I couldn't get my dialysis treatment because the kidney center was closed.
Other hospitals in Khartoum, too, have been thrown into chaos, while many doctors and nurses remain trapped inside hospitals. Those with chronic illnesses have been unable to leave their homes.
Patients should do the dialysis once every 2 days. There are some patients who didn't do it for 10 days. If they didn't do the dialysis 2 or 3 times, then the patient has an 80% chance of dying.
And then this happened. WHO alerted that one of the warring parties seized a laboratory in Khartoum, holding measles and cholera pathogens and other hazardous materials. It is being called a high risk of biological hazard in the Sudanese capital.
It is occupied by one of the fighting parties, and they kicked out all the technicians from the lab. That is extremely, extremely dangerous because we have polio isolates in the lab, we have measles isolates on the lab, we have cholera isolates in the lab. So there is a huge biological risk associated with the occupation of the Central Public Health Lab.
Countries are rushing in to actively evacuate their citizens from cities across Sudan. Saudi Arabia was the first country to announce rescue operations for its stranded citizens. On the 24th of April, a ship carrying rescued people from Sudan arrived in the Saudi Arabian city of Jeddah. Nearly 200 people were rescued. These included wheelchair-bound elderly women and babies asleep in their parents' arms. They had to make a daring journey.
Thank God we managed to get out safely. We traveled for about 10 hours from Khartoum to reach Port Sudan, from where we boarded the ship. And then we spent 20 hours on this ship to reach Jeddah.
By the 25th of April, Saudi Arabia had managed to evacuate 356 people in total. This includes 101 Saudis and 255 foreigners from over 20 countries, including South Korea. An aircraft carrying 29 South Korean evacuees also arrived in Jeddah. From here, they will travel in a larger military aircraft to Seoul. An estimated 3,000 Indian citizens are presently located throughout Sudan. Soon after the fighting erupted on the 15th of April, many of them started sending appeals for evacuation via Twitter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. India launched Operation Kaveri to evacuate its citizens, and the embassy in Khartoum was quick to start a helpline that provided evacuation-related information. The government said that it is focusing on the safety of all those stranded in Sudan. To carry out the evacuations, India has positioned 2 transport aircraft of the Indian Air Force in the Saudi Arabian city of Jeddah and a naval ship at a key port in Sudan. The Indian government is also coordinating closely with several partners for the safe movement of its stranded nationals. Other countries have also come to its aid. Recently, 3 Indians were evacuated to Saudi Arabia, and a French evacuation mission helped 5 Indians escape Sudan. On the 23rd of April, a convoy carrying French citizens was attacked in Khartoum. 1 person was injured. The warring Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces each accused the other of carrying out the attack. France shut down its embassy in the Sudanese capital and launched an evacuation plan, calling it Operation Sagittaire. President Emmanuel Macron confirmed that France had managed to evacuate 538 people from Sudan, including 209 French citizens. They were flown in military planes to the French airbase in Djibouti. Britain was quick to evacuate diplomatic staff and their family members from the war-torn country, but over 2,000 British nationals remain trapped in Sudan, many of whom complained about feeling abandoned. Amid criticism that they have been slow to help citizens, the UK government announced that it will begin evacuation flights when Germany relinquishes temporary control of an airfield north of Khartoum. Military flights are now evacuating those with a UK passport. On the 23rd of April, U.S. Special Operations Forces carried out an evacuation of the American embassy. Such embassy evacuations are quite uncommon. U.S. officials said that their helicopters were on the ground for less than an hour. Authorities said they had airlifted fewer than 100 people with 3 Chinook helicopters. After the last employee had been rescued, the U.S. shuttered its embassy in Khartoum indefinitely. However, an estimated 16,000 American civilians are still trapped in the fighting in Sudan.
Even as we have temporarily suspended operations on the ground in Khartoum, our diplomatic and consular work in Sudan continues.
Saying it would be too dangerous to carry out a broader evacuation mission, Washington said they would assist those remaining Americans in Sudan to the extent possible. While some citizens received help from their home nations, others, like Rawan al-Walid, had to fend for themselves. She was expecting to fly from Khartoum to Cairo last week for a wedding. Instead, she ended up traveling from Sudan to Egypt in a bus her family chartered to escape from the country.
الحقيقة دي كانت أطول رحلة أكثر من 72 ساعة إحنا في الطريق.
This was indeed the longest trip. We were on the road for more than 72 hours, full of fear, amid the hard decisions to leave behind my home, my country, Sudan, and many other things. It was a difficult decision to just leave like that. My father's family decided to rent a bus to travel from Khartoum to Aswan.
ويتحركوا به من الخرطوم.
As she sits in a cafeteria after crossing the border into Egypt, Intisar Mohammed El Haj says she is too shocked to contemplate the future. She fled Sudan along with her husband and 3 children. Their lives have been turned upside down.
هي يمكن أصعب لحظة التفكير في الخروج هي ما قبل الخروج.
The hardest part was leaving the country amid the sounds of heavy explosions and gunfire. The conflict between the armed forces and the rapid support forces has almost divided the capital. We decided to use a cab and not our personal car to avoid being targeted. Even our driver was scared throughout the journey.
كأنه البلد أو العاصمة أصبحت مقسمة.
As countries carry out large-scale evacuations for protecting their citizens, she wonders who will come to the rescue of the Sudanese people.
Countries are evacuating their citizens from Sudan. This is really scary for us, the Sudanese people. Friendly countries are evacuating their citizens as well. But what's left for us, the Sudanese people?
That's the big question. What about the people? The clashes have triggered a mass exodus. Khartoum, the capital, already looks like a ghost town. Residents of the third largest African nation are in distress. In 2003, the war in the Darfur region in western Sudan killed an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 people. That was 20 years ago, when a civil war spiraled into a genocide. But after the long-time Sudanese dictator Omar al-Bashir was ousted, there was hope, until now. Convulsed by fighting, Sudan is on the brink of collapse once again. Will the world push for peace in Sudan?